Welcome to Share.care, an all-inclusive community sharing experience, strength, and hope to create strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships. Share.care communities work toward every individual feeling safe, valued, and heard, free from the threat of danger, pain, or harm. Each episode, founder Damian Andrews explores the principles underpinning Share.care and invites expert special guests to share their knowledge so you can easily reap the benefits so many others experience. You hold the choice to create your future. Let it be with strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships.
Welcome to the Share.care podcast. Our belief is that global peace starts at home. Feeling safe, valued, and heard gives you a foundation to confidently step out and make the world a happier and safer place for everybody. Because in today's world, it's in your own selfish best interest to help others. Today, we have JD Schramm as our special guest. JD is a keynote speaker, author, and teaches you how to inspire others to act. Welcome, JD.
Thank you so much, Damian. It's good to be with you today.
It's wonderful having you on the show. To start, would you mind sharing a bit of background of yourself, where you're from, and the challenges that you faced that inspired you to get for you to do what you're doing now?
Happy to. I consider each day that I'm here to be a second chance, a blessing to still be here on the planet. And so, whatever I can do to help make it better, even just for one person in one conversation, I want to strive to do that. A little bit of my journey: I am a recovering addict. I struggle a little bit as I say that, Damian, because I'm thoughtful about the fact that when you have an addiction, when you struggle with, as I did with addiction to drugs and alcohol, you're always just one drink away or one hit away from being back in your addiction. So it's not something that's ever cured for you, but each day is deeper and deeper recovery. And so I at this point have just over 19 years of consistent recovery. And another part of my journey in recovery from addiction is also acknowledging my struggle with depression, and particularly with suicide. And here in the United States, we're actually moving into, I'm not sure when your listeners will hear this, but here in the United States, September is Suicide Awareness Month. And so there's been a lot of focus on the crisis of depression and suicide around the world, and in both our countries. And I'm fortunate that I failed at what I sought out to do, and so I am still here, and I'm delighted that I was given a second chance on life.
I think it's quite inspiring to others that you actually talk about that, because I think it affects a lot more people than we realize. And we have, in my family, we had a failed suicide attempt, and one of my best friend from high school, primary school, all the way through high school, he had 4 children and then gave up, and they found him hanging in his garage. So it's I think it's more common, and it's wonderful that you're able to talk about that from that side of depression, and share that with people. So you had from what I understand, you had a fairly tragic experience and you were quite fortunate not to, because many people, as I understand, you jumped off the Manhattan Bridge. Is that correct?
Correct, Damien. I'm one of the few people who has lived from that serious of a suicide attempt. And I want to be careful for the listeners who are going to hear this conversation, because that even just hearing somebody made an attempt like that may cause people to think of taking a similar action. And so would urge people, if that is in any way triggering for you or challenging for you, to reach out, chat with somebody, find someone that you can have a conversation with, so you don't live with that in your head. But in terms of my journey, I had been struggling to get clean from drugs and alcohol literally for 25 years. I went to my first 12-step meeting. I was 13 years old, and I was in my late 30s before I ultimately really surrendered and began to step into recovery. And it was after several failed attempts that I was like, I am just not going to make it. I am one of those people that's not going to be able to make it. And I was so depressed at having failed at recovery that on the night of June 11th, 2003, I went to the edge of the Manhattan Bridge and paused, thought a little bit, is this really what I want to do? And then climbed up and leapt off. And I, at some point, passed out in midair, came into the water, shattered my right arm, broke all of my ribs, punctured my lung, did a lot of physical damage because of the height of that fall. But this is even weird to talk about with you, Damien, but I heard the voice say in my head, it doesn't have to end this way. And with my one good arm, I was able to keep myself afloat and start calling out for help. And as best as we can recreate what happened next, I floated underneath the Brooklyn Bridge and out into close enough to the pathway of the Staten Island Ferry. And there were passengers on the Staten Island Ferry who heard me calling for help. And they alerted the captain of the ship, and he alerted the Coast Guard, and they sent out a search party, and they found me in the water probably an hour and a half, 2 hours. We don't know, after I had left. The police told my family later that there are people who survive the fall, but they then end up drowning because of the physical injuries. So for whatever reason, there was a guardian angel working overtime that night, but I was fished out of the water, taken to Bellevue Hospital in New York City, where I spent almost a month recovering physically and emotionally from what I had done. And somewhere in that stay at Bellevue, my will to live returned, and I was able to step back into my life and begin repairing the financial damage I was in, the um, friendships, the family relationships. I had done a lot of damage to a lot of people in my attempt, and and slowly was able to put back together a life today that is unrecognizable to the guy who leapt off the bridge in 2003. But I couldn't see the future at that point. I could only see failure. And so I'm glad that I'm still here.
I think that's really important, and I do want to touch on what you mentioned before. If anyone is listening and contemplating that, as you've heard from that story, there was that thought, and something is triggered that there's a will to live returned, and there's always that. And so, if you are feeling that, I just want to sidetrack from that. But if anyone is listening to that, do reach out to somebody. There's a lot of people out there that do care. You might not be aware of it, but just reach out to someone, because there are a lot of people out there that care. And you talked a little bit about that from your in your videos that I watched, JD, that there were so many people that helped you recover. And that's what I'd like. Could you expand on that a little bit too, just in case someone is listening, to know that there is hope out there. There are people out there that care.
Absolutely. And Damien, I know you have a global audience, so I don't even want to give phone numbers or websites because it may not be the right country. But maybe we could put some stuff in the show notes that people can get help in whatever location they're at. In my case, I jokingly say, I had a dream team that I surrounded myself with. Immediately at the core of it was my father and my older sister, who traveled from the Midwest out to New York City. My dad at that point was about to turn 80, and he was at my hospital bedside every single day until I was released. And my older sister Took, I think, 2 weeks off work and was there and managed a lot of my financial affairs and healthcare. I had no health insurance, dealing with the hospital. They were phenomenal. But it was really that first year that I think made all the difference for me. And I can only share my own experience, not a healthcare professional, not a trained professional, um, just a lucky layman. And in that first year, I put together a dream team. It was, my physician, psychiatrist. I was on psychiatric meds for the first year, antidepressants. Um, my pastor for the spiritual work that I was doing, my sponsor in the rooms of recovery, and even my CPA was a part of my dream team. Now they didn't know each other, but they were all helping me put together the pieces of my life that I needed to do. One remarkable piece that happened, I talk about this in my TED talk. If any of your viewers want to look it up, it's 4 minutes long. It's not one of the 18-minute talks in the TED library. But I had uh, just signed a contract, a teaching contract to work at my alma mater, and I did not lose my teaching job. And they did not ask a lot of questions. This happened in June. I wasn't scheduled to start teaching until November, but by the way my schedule was, and that gave me 4 or 5 months to really, focus on the recovery that I needed to do. And then I came back and I had a job. I had something to do. I had income. I had health insurance, and that enabled me to really start rebuilding things in that first year. And it was several years later. I was well over 3 years past my attempt before I started dating. I really needed to focus on me first before I started focusing on, being a part of the world, outside of myself.
Wow, that's pretty amazing that you. What I wanted to draw, and for people listening that might be contemplating this, and you've got this on your homepage of your website. There's another YouTube, and you get into a lot of detail about resilience. And it sounds like in this process that, and from that recovery, you had that support. You reached, well, you had a circumstance where people were alerted to that. But that's what I'm saying for people. If you are listening, thinking about it, reach out to people, because people will help. That people have this natural desire to help if they recognize someone's in trouble. But can you talk a little bit, JD, about that resilience, or building that resilience for people that are listening? They're going, okay, things are not going as well as I want, and but you mention it, and you say resilience is a muscle. You specifically refer to that now, and obviously strengthening muscle takes repetition and work and exercise. And you talk about 3 do's and 3 don'ts. Can you expand on that? Because I'm sure if they are listening to this in that situation, what could they do to start building that resilience muscle?
Absolutely. And the talk you're referencing, I was invited to MIT last year to share a talk as part of their program that they call FAIL, that is specifically timed for MIT students right before the exam period in November, right before they go into the exam period in December, to give them the support they need, that they don't make tragic, permanent choices that are drawn from what's going on in one class or one professor or one experience. So my philosophy that I share in that talk, and that I try to live my life by, is that resilience is a muscle that you want to build and develop before you need it. And so this is great for somebody that things are kind of going okay. You're not in a place of crisis, but what can you do that helps you build that muscle? So there's 3 things I believe that we can do. The first is nurture relationships, and nurture them in an analog fashion. This is so crucial for young people who live on text messaging and Instagram and Twitter and TikTok. Literally develop relationships by walking across the hall in your dorm and meeting somebody, or meeting somebody for coffee and putting the devices aside. to pick up the phone and have a conversation with somebody, rather than living in this media-rich environment. The second thing you can do is practice gratitude on a daily basis. I don't do it every day consistently, but I try every day before I start replying to emails. I send one email out that is an email of gratitude, something that happened the day before, somebody I want to acknowledge or I want to thank, so that I practice gratitude. And when I'm having a bad day, I'll go back and look at those emails, those first of the day emails, and see what it is. For a while, I shared a gratitude list with another friend. We text each other as we got into bed. What were three things we were grateful for? But build resilience by practicing gratitude.
Can you, sorry, just on that gratitude side of things, I think you mentioned in your in that talk on your homepage that you made a conscious effort to start the day with a gratitude email. Can you expand a little bit on that? Because you just referred to coming back to that gratitude email if you had a bad day. So can
Yeah,
you explain that? Because I think that's a useful tool that people could use.
yeah. It's just however you choose to do it, whether it's an email or a text message or a handwritten note in your calendar, in your journal. If we begin by saying, what am I grateful for today? What can I appreciate? And when I use that word appreciate, I'm very specific about it. What we appreciate in our life appreciates, it grows in value. So if I appreciate my children, if I appreciate my spouse, or I appreciate my employer, that act of appreciation, just like a car, appreciates in value. And so gratitude allows me to appreciate and grow the things around me that I want to have more of. And for some people, that can be very materialistic, and for some people, that can be very much, art or relationships or nature. But be grateful for what you have and appreciate it so that it appreciates in your life and it grows.
Uh, Appreciate it so it appreciates. That's a wonderful
Yeah.
slogan. We have to put JD behind that one, I think.
I don't know if it's my own, but I haven't seen it anywhere else.
No,
So
I
I
haven't
think
heard of that.
I'll
That's
take
wonderful. Sorry, I'm
it.
interrupting you. Yeah, so the first
That's okay.
nurture analog relationships, gratitude daily, and so yeah, continue on for the third one.
And then the third one is to keep your dreams in front of you. And again, a lot of different ways you can do this. My husband and I, we practice vision boards. We try near the beginning of the year, and we try to involve the kids with it. We'll sit there with a ton of magazines and a poster board, and we'll cut out what it is that we want to have in the year ahead. And for the kids, it may be a trip to Disneyland. For the dads, it may be, time at the beach, or something we want to buy for the house. My husband right now is building a trail in our backyard that goes up the back hill that he can put benches on, and then that's part of his vision for the year. But keep your dreams in front of you. Maybe it's publishing a book or starting a podcast like you've got, Damien. Maybe it's a relationship, or before we adopted, we had a vision board that had lots of babies on it because we really wanted to be parents. But keep those dreams in front of you. And I feel these three steps, the nurturing relationships, the practicing gratitude, and keeping dreams in front of you, that gives you something to fall back on when things get difficult, when things get hard. It's like, yeah, this is a really rough day, but I know that if I press through, there are better days ahead because this is what I envision.
Yeah, so that third point, if we can touch on that from a depression point of view, because often a lot of times depression and times when I look at it, I've felt sad and things. It's often looking back and going, "Oh, I wish this happened," or "Why did this happen to me?" and that kind of thing. Whereas, how much do you think that played a part in your recovery from depression to switching from looking back to what you don't have to looking forward and what you do have? Did that play a pivotal role or play a pivotal role? Sorry.
I think the way I can answer that, Damien, is that in 2003, I wasn't practicing any of these things. And so when things got bad, they look bad, and I could only see the bad in front of my face.
Yeah.
I couldn't be grateful, couldn't, just got a contract to teach at NYU. I just sold my apartment for a six-figure profit. Like, I had a whole bunch of things and happened the week that I attempted to take my life. And I wasn't seeing the great things that were going. I was seeing the bad things that were
Yeah.
there. Now, let me fast forward to 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, or early in the first year of the pandemic. Um, I lost not one, but two jobs that I loved at the same university. I won't go into all the details that went into that, but I started 2020 with a faculty appointment and an administrative appointment, both of which I really loved. And I lost the faculty appointment, was communicated to me via email, and came to an agreement with my boss in a Zoom conversation that he and I weren't aligned. His name was on the outside of the building. He raised all the money for the program. It was pretty clear who was going to win, this
Yeah.
debate of leadership theory. And by July of 2020, everything that I thought I had built professionally had vanished.
Yeah.
But at that point, I was practicing vision boarding. I was practicing gratitude and appreciation. I was nurturing relationships that weren't just, text messages and Facebook posts. And so that job loss didn't send me into a tailspin, did not send me into a depressive episode, did not take me to the edge of a bridge, because I had built resilience in my life that I could fall back on when things got rough. And that moment was probably, it's up there in the top 5 hardest things I have gone through, maybe the top 3 hardest things I've gone through. But I was able to come out the other side stronger, richer, happier, because I had resilience. And I didn't have that in 2003, and almost lost my life over the depression that I was feeling.
Wow. So that really gave you, yeah. So you've got these two very extreme experiences, but having that resilience, practicing, nurturing relationships, gratitude, and having that focus of your vision, gave you that strength. Well, that's the two do's. What about the two don'ts? If you want to put it that way,
I
you've got
love
three two don'ts.
I love the way I created this talk, and I love that you saw it and want to chat further about it. So, what you can avoid to
Yeah.
keep resilience in your life, first and foremost, is avoid toxic people. If you're in a friendship with somebody and it's a toxic relationship, if you have a family member that when you see them, you are annoyed, irritated, and maybe almost even angry with them, maybe not go home for that holiday, or maybe be in separate rooms when you do go to family events. Um, but literally avoid letting toxic people around you, and avoid getting their toxicity on you. Like, you don't need to swim in those waters.
Yeah. I think one of the, to put it in a quote that I learned way, way, way too late in life, was no amount of skill will fix a poor partner choice, whether that's in your relationship, whether it's friendship, whether it's business. It applies across the board. And I know that from a very long-term, personal relationship and a number of business relationships that I tried really, really hard for a long time to fix, and it was never going to fix. It's like you say, it's avoid that. And it's not that either I look at it and go, well, everyone brings their own things to that, but it's like sometimes people just don't fit together, and it's
Yep.
so avoid toxic
And
relationships.
and they may see you as toxic, and you may be, it may be good that you're in separate places. I
Yeah.
want to get on to the other two, but the
So
analogy that I've used with it is, if you reach in the fridge and you grab out milk and it's sour, you
yeah.
don't put it back in for 2 more weeks thinking maybe it will get better. No, it's sour. Throw it out. So,
Exactly.
uh,
Sorry. Go ahead. Number 2 and
so
3.
the second one is to reduce or eliminate artificial substances.
Yeah.
Now, I am in recovery, so I don't drink and I don't use. I don't demand that of others. I have friends who drink responsibly. I have friends who get high socially on occasion. They don't involve me in it. Um, but I find that my resilience is stronger if I don't have artificial substances. And let's define that a little broadly. It could be shopping or gambling or use of porn online. It could be something that someone else can do, but for you, it becomes a a substitute, an artificial substance that gets in the way of you being authentic and real with other
Yeah.
people in your life.
Okay.
And then the third is avoid the false confidence, the bravado of "I've got this. Don't worry, I'm okay. I can take care of this. I can handle this on my own." And that was really important, I think, for the group of MIT students to hear that no, it is okay to say, I need some help. I'm struggling in this moment. To as you said a few minutes ago in the podcast, if any of this is triggering for you, reach out to someone in your community or reach out to one of the crisis lines or the text lines, um, and acknowledge that you need some help and ask for that help. The false bravado of I can handle all of this, don't worry about me, um, actually becomes a shell that on the inside we get weaker and weaker because we're acting like we've got something that we don't have a handle on. So ask for help.
And that's a really important point, which is the underpinning foundation of what share is about. It's, we do, people have this false bravado where they think that they have to do it themselves. But when you think about it, if you put it in the reverse situation, if you're feeling that you've got this false bravado, or you have to do it yourself, put yourself in the reverse. If someone come to you and asked you for help, what would you do? And I think
Yeah.
it's like, so for people listening, if you remember and listen to JD's story, because we're circling back to where you started, where, you jump off the bridge and all of a sudden all these people come to help you. But same token too, if we take that step for someone in this situation, what are your thoughts, JD? If someone reaches out to someone and says, look, I'm thinking about this, what do you think most people would do?
I think most people would drop everything to be there for you
Yeah.
and jump in and help. I'll give a simple story that I think illustrates this. My husband and I moved to a new home just about a year ago, just outside of San Francisco. We live about 11 miles north of the city. And I got a text message from one of my daughter's friends' mothers. Now, I don't know her well. I know she's a single mom. And she texted and said, "Hey, I've got to go to a memorial service this weekend, and I don't have anybody to take care of my daughter. Could she do a play date at your house?" I was thrilled that she would reach out and would ask, could I be of help in that moment for her? And the girls had a great time, and they're closer friends now than they were before because they spent the night and they did not get much sleep, but that's okay. And the fact that she would reach out to me, who she didn't quite know, but would ask that of me, made me feel great. And you bet I was going to make it happen. And I think that's what most people will do. Now, occasionally, somebody may confide something in you that you can't help with. You don't have the bandwidth to do, or you don't have the skills to do. You can still help that person by helping them get to the right person who can help them. If somebody were to call me and say, JD, my website crashed, I absolutely need somebody to come over, I'll be like, let me see who I can find. I am not the guy to come over and help you with that.
Yeah.
But I would go through my Rolodex and I would call people and I would reach out to people and I would find the right resource for them. And it could be something as trivial as a website or as serious as depression or other issues that somebody is facing. um, I want to encourage your listeners, if you're feeling those, reach out. And if somebody reaches out to you and you can't help, find the resources so that you're able to get them the help that they do need.
Wonderful, wonderful. So now we're moving into the part where you get to, because you've what you do now is from what I understand, you teach people how to inspire others to act. So this is your part to plug what you do and how you can help others. And I know on your website you talk about that from a business perspective, because that would be a reasonable market, but also to looking at what you do, that would be for parents, because as a parent you're inspiring your children. That those same principles would apply, if I understand correctly. So do you want to tell us a little bit about what you do and how people can find you and how you can help them?
Yes. And again, I'm happy to have people reach out to me, uh, even if I'm not the right resource, because I'll figure out who is and do what I can to support them. Um, After leaving higher ed, I jokingly say it took me 13 years to graduate from Stanford. I spent 6 months or so looking at working at other organizations, nonprofit, for profit, higher ed, outside of higher ed, and ultimately decided that it was time for me to be my own boss. And so I launched my own independent communication coaching, speaking, and training business. And I work with a wide variety of organizations and individuals, whether it's doing an online Zoom training for a group of leaders who are trying to communicate more effectively, doing one-on-one coaching for somebody who is about to give a major TED talk or a major pitch for funding for their startup, uh, as well as for people that just want to watch some of the videos that I have recorded or read the book that I've written at a much lower price point than working with me individually. And and the beauty of teaching communication is that it crosses all fields and all areas that somebody may want to work on. So I'll have execs who are in one of my classes, and they're there to learn how to inspire their potential investors to invest more in the company. And they'll be like, you know what? This will work with my kids. I didn't take your class to be a better parent, but I can use this with my kids.
Yeah.
And so I'm delighted that I have both a passion and a field of expertise around how we write, how we speak in a way that allows us to tell the story only we can tell, that will enable it for other people to take the action we want them to take. And I'm happy for people to look me up, jdschramm.com. Happy to have people look me up, check out the resources that are there, and delighted that you and your team found me across the globe. And it's fascinating to me to see how inside of COVID, we've actually been more able to reach across the globe and have conversations like this, because we would have thought we had to sit down in person 3 years ago, and we don't. We can do it all through media.
Yeah, so and that's very true. And again, coming back to that's what Share is about. It's like you mentioned at the start, you're not sure where you fit into it, but you fit exactly into it because you've been through and lived life across the spectrum that people experience, and sharing that experience is helps everybody. And so is that the best way to reach out to you, through your website, or now it's the time to plug, how do people contact you? You mentioned your website, but what's the best
Yeah,
way for them to reach you?
yeah. The best way to reach me is through the website. There's a contact form that comes directly. I'm a one-man show, so it comes directly to me if you fill it out. The email is very simply jd@jdschramm.com. So that's the best way to reach me and to find me. Um, my husband and I, so my background is leadership communication. I've taught in MBA programs and master's programs for most of the last 25 years. My husband is a former Broadway performer and actor who now is a minister.
Oh,
For the
wow.
last 10 years, he's been a minister of the Unity Church here in San Francisco. And he and I team up and we teach workshops together. He does the voice and movement piece, and I do the storytelling and structure piece. And we are offering a public workshop in mid-November in Kansas City, Missouri. So for people who are in the States, we chose a spot right in the middle of the country that people could come join us for a 3-day intensive workshop with the two of us. But that's just one way in which I can be available to people who want to work on how to increase their mastery at writing and at speaking.
Fantastic. Well, JD, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. There's just so much there, and hopefully, I can encourage you to come back for a second take because there's so many more questions that I have for you. If that would be okay.
You bet. The next book that I'm writing, my COVID project, is my memoir about how I have turned things around. The working title right now is The Bridge Back to Life. And I have the draft of it done. I hope it's published in 2023. And I hope that we can come back. I'd love to talk about that. And hopefully that will help even more people build that muscle of resilience before they need it. Not to go to the extreme that I did, but to be able to do something sooner and not end up in such a critical state. Damien, thank you for finding me, and thank you for this conversation. It's been a great way to re-presence myself to this content as well.
Now, wonderful having you on the show, JD. It is absolute pleasure, and I'm really glad to meet you, and look forward to us catching up again in the future. Thank you, JD.
I look forward to it.
Thank you for being part of the Share.care community and helping people around the world prosper. You're creating a bigger pie for everyone to share. The more people contributing to the world being a better place, the better the world becomes, for others and for you.